It was almost midnight, and the hospital had slipped into that strange kind of stillness that only comes after a long, chaotic day. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm coffee left too long on a break room table. Most of the patients were asleep, their monitors quietly blinking beside them, and even the usual buzz of voices and footsteps had faded into soft whispers and distant echoes. Only the beeping of machines and the occasional squeak of wheels on polished floors broke the silence. Nurse Emily Carter was nearing the end of her shift. She sat at the main desk in the dimly lit hallway, going over her final chart notes for the night. Her back ached, her feet throbbed, and her eyes were heavy from staring at computer screens all day, but she kept working, carefully flipping through paperwork, double-checking records, and making sure everything was in order. That was Emily. Always double-checking. Always making sure nothing slipped through the cracks. Not because someone told her to, but because she believed every patient deserved her full attention, no matter how late it was or how tired she felt. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, her hair had come loose from the bun she tied hours ago, and a small coffee stain marked her pocket, but there was still something graceful about her. Warm. Gentle. She had a way of making patients feel safe, like everything was going to be okay, even when it wasn't. She talked to elderly patients like they were her own grandparents. She held the hands of scared children and whispered, "You're very brave," like she meant every word. And she did. That night, as the clock moved toward midnight, Emily leaned over to review one last file, a patient scheduled for brain surgery the next morning. The surgery was serious, and the patient, a young man in his 20s, had just been admitted 2 days ago. Emily frowned as her eyes scanned the chart. Something didn't look right. The scans attached didn't match the summary she remembered reading earlier that day. There was a dosage note that felt off, a time stamp that looked like it had been edited. It wasn't the kind of thing most people would notice, but Emily noticed. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Maybe it's just a printing error, she thought. But a small voice in the back of her mind told her it wasn't. She trusted that voice. It had saved lives before. She stood up to walk over to the records office, hoping to compare the paper file with the digital one, when she heard the sound. Fast, sharp footsteps. Hard soles clicking aggressively against the floor tiles. She turned her head. Dr. Jonathan Reeves. Her heart dropped. He moved quickly down the hall, his long white coat swaying behind him like a cape. His face was tight, eyes narrowed. Even from a distance, Emily could feel the pressure in the air shift. The other nurses at nearby stations stopped what they were doing. One of them, a young man in training, actually stepped back and disappeared into the break room. No one wanted to be in Reeves' path when he was like this. Dr. Reeves was the hospital's top neurosurgeon. Some said he was brilliant, maybe even a genius. His hands were steady, his techniques cutting edge. People traveled from other states just to be treated by him. But brilliance didn't make him kind, or fair, or decent. He was cold. Always had been. The kind of man who didn't remember the names of nurses he'd worked with for years. The kind of boss who barked orders and blamed others when things went wrong. And when he was angry like he was now, his presence filled the entire hallway with tension. Emily stood her ground. She didn't look away, but she could feel her heart thudding in her chest. She knew something was wrong, and she had a feeling that whatever was happening next, it wasn't going to be good. As he got closer, his eyes locked onto hers with a sharp, piercing glare. His jaw clenched. No greeting. No words. Just quiet, burning anger. He was headed straight for her. And somewhere deep inside, Emily knew. This night wasn't over yet. Dr. Jonathan Reeves stopped right in front of Emily's desk, his breath slightly heavy, not from walking, but from anger. His eyes were sharp, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful, and in his hand he held a patient file. Not just any file. The same file Emily had just looked at. He didn't speak right away. For a moment he just stood there, staring at her like she was the source of everything that had gone wrong in his world. The silence was louder than any words. Then, without warning, he slammed the file down on the desk. "What is this?" he snapped, his voice low but full of threat. "Why was this chart touched? Who gave you permission to make changes?" Emily froze for half a second, surprised by the sudden attack. Her heart started to pound, but she took a slow breath and tried to stay calm. "I didn't change anything," she replied gently, keeping her voice steady. "I noticed something didn't match earlier notes, so I was double-checking. That's all." But Reeves didn't want calm. He didn't want a conversation. He wanted someone to blame. "Don't lie to me," he barked, leaning over the desk. "I don't care how long you've been here. If you're touching my surgical files without permission, you're putting lives at risk." Emily stood up, trying to hold her ground. She wasn't a new nurse. She wasn't irresponsible. She had always followed protocol. But Reeves was twisting things. And now, the hallway was no longer empty. Other nurses were watching from a distance, frozen in place, afraid to speak. "Dr. Reeves," she said, a little firmer now, "I would never touch a file without cause. The data didn't match. I was concerned. That's all." His eyes narrowed. "Concerned?" he repeated, almost mocking her. Then suddenly he reached across the desk and snatched the clipboard from her hands, hard enough that her knuckles scraped against the edge. "You're not paid to be concerned. You're paid to follow orders." The words hit like a slap. But it wasn't just the words, it was the way he looked at her, like she was beneath him. Like she was a mistake. Emily's cheeks burned, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. He turned to the other staff in the hallway, holding the clipboard high like it was evidence in a courtroom. "This is the exact kind of mistake that costs lives," he shouted. "We don't have room for nurses who play detective." Then to Emily, cold and direct. "You're done. Get your things. You're finished here." Silence. For a second the world stopped spinning. Emily blinked, stunned. Fired? Just like that? No meeting with HR? No explanation? "What?" she said quietly. "You can't just." "You're done," he repeated louder now. His voice echoed down the corridor. "Effective immediately." Other nurses stood frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Some looked away. A few looked like they wanted to say something, but fear kept their mouths shut. Reeves had power and everyone knew it. Emily felt her throat tighten. She wasn't just humiliated, she was blindsided. She had come into work ready to help people. And now she was being thrown out like trash. Her hands trembled, but she still tried to stay strong. "You're making a mistake," she said softly, her voice shaking just a little. "I didn't do anything wrong." But Reeves had already turned his back. He walked away without another word, leaving the file on the desk and Emily standing in the middle of the hallway alone. A few nurses slowly returned to their duties, whispering to each other behind worried eyes. One young nurse, Kayla, gave Emily a small glance of sympathy, but didn't dare come closer. Emily slowly picked up her things. She didn't cry. Not yet. Her hands moved slowly, carefully. But her mind was racing. She couldn't understand what just happened. Why would Reeves go after her like that? Why was he so desperate to shut her down? She didn't have the answer yet. But something deep in her gut told her. This wasn't about a mistake. It was about a secret. And whatever was hiding in that patient file, whatever Dr. Reeves was trying so hard to bury, it was big enough to destroy her life to keep it quiet. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss as Emily stepped out of the hospital. The cold night air hit her like a slap. "Sure. I see. Real." For a moment, she just stood there under the flickering parking lot lights, her arms crossed over her chest, not from the cold, but from shock. The same hospital she had given everything to, had just pushed her out like she was nothing. No warning. No hearing. No chance to explain. One angry doctor's word and her career was gone. She walked slowly toward her car, her shoes making soft clicking sounds on the pavement. Each step felt heavier than the last. When she opened the door and sat down in the driver's seat, she didn't start the engine. She didn't even reach for the keys. She just sat there in silence, staring at the glowing hospital sign across the parking lot. "Fired," she whispered aloud as if saying it might make it feel more real. The word tasted bitter. All the years she had worked there. All the time she'd stayed late, missed holidays, comforted dying patients, mentored younger nurses, and helped new doctors navigate their first real emergencies. All of it, erased in 10 minutes. But the worst part wasn't the humiliation. It was the way it happened. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. Emily pulled out her phone and opened the hospital app. She still had temporary access to internal files, for now. She tried to pull up the patient chart again, but it was gone. Vanished. Like it had never existed. That made her stomach drop. She leaned back in her seat, hands shaking slightly. Dr. Reeves hadn't just overreacted. He had wanted her out of the way. Badly. And fast. And now the file she was concerned about had been completely wiped. That wasn't just ego. That was fear. Somewhere behind the anger and shouting, Reeves was hiding something. And Emily was starting to believe it had nothing to do with a misplaced chart, and everything to do with something much bigger. Her phone buzzed. A text message. "You okay?" It was from Luis, one of the overnight janitors. A quiet man, older, who mostly kept to himself. But he always said hello to Emily. They shared coffee once in the break room during a bad storm. She remembered that he had kind eyes. Emily stared at the message for a second before typing back. No. I got fired. Reeves set me up. Pause. Then. I know. I saw something. Her heart stopped. She immediately texted again. What do you mean? What did you see? No response. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Still nothing. Then finally. Not safe to say here. Meet me behind your lot. 10 minutes. Emily didn't hesitate. She started the engine and drove around the back of the hospital, her headlights cutting through the darkness. This was crazy, she thought. Was she really meeting a janitor behind the ER in the middle of the night? But something in her gut told her this wasn't just about her job anymore. When she pulled into the back lot, she saw Luis leaning against a utility truck, sipping from a worn-out thermos. He looked up as she approached and gave her a tired nod. You okay, Nurse Emily? He asked quietly. No, she admitted. But I think you already knew that. Luis looked around nervously, then motioned for her to come closer. Last week, he said, voice low, I was cleaning outside Reeves' office. Thought everyone had gone home. But I saw him coming out with a box of files and this little vial. He didn't see me. He looked jumpy, like someone was watching him. I thought it was weird, but I didn't say anything. Emily's heart started pounding. A vial? What kind of vial? Luis shrugged. Didn't get a good look. But it didn't have a hospital label. Looked like some private pharmacy or something. That's not allowed, right? She nodded slowly. No, it's not. Luis looked down at the ground for a moment, then back up at her. You were getting too close. That's why he went after you. Emily was silent, trying to process it all. Her firing hadn't been random. It had been a move, a strategy, a way to cover up something he was desperate to keep hidden. And now she had a choice. She could walk away, go home, try to find another job somewhere else, keep her head down and pretend none of this ever happened. Or she could find out the truth. Emily stared up at the glowing windows of the hospital. Inside those walls, something was wrong. She didn't know what yet, but she was starting to believe it could be dangerous. Not just to her, but to patients, to innocent people. She turned back to Luis. Can you help me get into his office? Luis hesitated, then slowly nodded. Meet me here tomorrow night. Midnight. I'll leave the side door unlocked. Emily took a deep breath. Her hands were still trembling, but not from fear this time. From purpose. Whatever Reeves was hiding, she was going to find it, even if it meant risking everything. The hospital looked different at night. It wasn't just the quiet, it was the feeling. The air felt heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The brightly lit hallways Emily had walked 1,000 times now looked shadowed and cold. And this time she wasn't walking in through the front doors with a badge and a warm smile. She was sneaking in. The next night, just before midnight, Emily parked in the back lot again. She wore a black hoodie and jeans, nothing that would give away she had once worked here. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum as she approached the maintenance entrance near the ER loading dock. The door was slightly cracked open, just like Luis promised. She slipped inside and quietly closed it behind her, the click of the lock sounding far too loud in the silence. The hallway ahead was dim, lit only by scattered emergency lights. She moved slowly, listening for any footsteps, any voices, but the corridor was empty. Luis had left a handwritten note taped to the side of a cleaning cart. East Wing, 2nd floor. His office. I'll keep the security feed on loop for 10 minutes. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she read it, but she nodded to herself and moved forward. Every corner she turned felt like it could be a trap. Every sound made her flinch. But still she kept going. She had to know the truth. As she reached the 2nd floor, her mind started flashing through every interaction she had ever had with Dr. Reeves. The cold stares. The way he dismissed questions. The anger that boiled over too fast. But she never thought he was dangerous. Now she wasn't so sure. His office door was locked, of course, but Luis had left a small key taped under the fire extinguisher nearby. Emily smiled just a little. For a janitor who kept to himself, Luis was surprisingly clever. She unlocked the door and slipped inside. The office smelled faintly of aftershave and paper. It was cleaner than she expected. Too clean. As if someone had come through and scrubbed every surface. She moved carefully, trying not to leave fingerprints. The room had a heavy wooden desk, a few bookshelves filled with thick medical journals, and a single locked file cabinet. That's where she went first. She tried the top drawer. Locked. She bent down and jiggled the second one. It opened with a soft creak. Inside were dozens of patient files, all neatly stacked in folders. At first, everything looked normal. standard forms, reports, post-op notes. But then she found something strange. A manila folder marked with only 2 letters in black marker. RD. She opened it. Inside were scans, MRI images, brain scans. But they weren't labeled. No names, no patient IDs. Just scan after scan along with handwritten notes. Some of them had dates that didn't match any patients Emily remembered. And then she saw it, a familiar name. Tyler Redden. The young man scheduled for brain surgery, the one whose chart she'd flagged the night she was fired. His scan had a red X across it. Beneath it was a small note scribbled in rushed handwriting. Proceed with trial sequence. No consent needed. Emily stared at the note, her blood turning cold. Trial? No consent? Was Reeves experimenting on patients? Before she could dig deeper, she heard a sound. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Her heart jumped into her throat. She quickly closed the drawer and shoved the folder into her hoodie. Then, without turning the lights back on, she slipped out the side door and ducked into a storage closet across the hall. She held her breath. The footsteps got closer, then stopped. Through the thin gap in the closet door, she saw a tall shadow, someone standing outside the office. Not security. Not a janitor. The way they stood was too still, too alert. Then, after what felt like a full minute, the shadow moved away. Emily waited another 30 seconds before carefully slipping out and heading back toward the maintenance door. Every step felt like walking through quicksand, her whole body alert, listening for the tiniest sound. When she finally made it back outside, she didn't breathe until she was back in her car with the doors locked. She pulled the folder out and stared at the name again. Tyler Redden. He was still scheduled for surgery, tomorrow. And if she was right, he was in danger. She started her car and pulled out her phone, her fingers moving fast. This wasn't just about getting fired anymore. It was about saving someone's life. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Emily wasn't afraid. She was ready to fight back. The next morning, Emily didn't sleep. She barely even blinked. The folder with Tyler Redden's name sat open on her kitchen table, lit by the early morning light streaming through her window. She'd read it a dozen times already, each time trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Unlabeled trial notes. Altered scan dates. Mentions of a sequence protocol with no official paperwork. The phrase "no consent needed" circled in red ink again and again. It wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. Tyler had no idea what was about to happen to him. Emily knew she had to act fast. She had no job, no badge, and no official authority anymore, but she had something stronger, the truth. And if no one inside the hospital would listen, she'd find someone who would. She grabbed her phone and started with the head of patient safety, Dr. Maya Chin, a thoughtful, honest doctor who had always treated Emily with respect. If anyone had the power to stop the surgery in time, it was her. The phone rang 5 times. Voicemail. Emily didn't wait. Dr. Chin, please, it's Emily. I know I'm not supposed to be calling, but this is about Tyler Redden. I found proof he's part of an unauthorized drug trial, and I don't think he gave consent. His surgery is scheduled for today, and I think Reeves is going to do something dangerous. Please call me back. Please. She hung up and immediately texted the same message, then grabbed the folder, stuffed it in her bag and raced out the door. By the time she reached the hospital, the parking lot was already filling up. Nurses were arriving for morning shift. Visitors were trickling in. The world looked normal on the outside. But Emily knew something was rotten behind those hospital walls. She couldn't walk through the front entrance without getting stopped. Security would recognize her. But she still had one option, the back delivery ramp, where Luis said he could meet her again. She circled to the back of the building, heart thudding. Luis was waiting beside the dumpsters, smoking a cigarette with one hand and holding a clipboard in the other. He looked up as she jogged over. "You're early," he said. "I didn't sleep," she replied. "Tyler's surgery is scheduled for 10 a.m. I have to stop it." Luis raised his eyebrows but didn't question her. He stubbed out his cigarette and handed her a set of coveralls and a surgical mask. "You're gonna need these," he said. Moments later, Emily walked into the building wearing hospital laundry gear and a clipboard in hand, looking just official enough to be ignored. She kept her head down and made her way to the surgical floor, her bag pressed tight to her side. She knew where they prepped patients. She knew how fast things moved in the OR. She had maybe 20 minutes to intervene before it was too late. She spotted Tyler's name on the surgical board. Room 3B. Pre-op. Craniotomy. 9:50 a.m. Just under 40 minutes left. She turned the corner and stopped. Dr. Reeves was there. right outside room 3B, laughing softly with a surgical assistant, wearing scrubs and gloves. He looked relaxed, too relaxed, like a man completely confident no one would question him. Emily ducked into a side hallway before he could see her. Her breathing sped up. She had to move fast. She couldn't go near him. Not yet. Instead, she went to the nurse's station and scanned the patient notes on the nearby monitor. No mention of a trial. No extra documents. The consent form on file looked standard, just routine surgery. She clicked deeper. Then her heart sank. The digital consent form had been signed yesterday, but not by Tyler. The signature was typed. No physical verification. No scanned copy. Emily knew Tyler had been sedated most of yesterday. He couldn't have signed anything. It was forged. She printed the screen, shoved the sheet in her bag, and raced toward the pre-op room. She had no plan left. No permission. No backup. Just truth and urgency. When she walked into the room, a young nurse was adjusting an 4-drip while Tyler lay on the bed, half awake and groggy. His eyes fluttered open when she spoke. "Tyler," she said gently. "It's Emily. Remember me? From the other night?" He blinked, confused, then nodded slightly. "Listen to me," she said urgently, glancing over her shoulder. "You're about to go into surgery. But there's something you need to know. There's no record of your real consent. You've been added to a trial without approval. The doctor, he's not telling you everything." The nurse looked alarmed. "Hey, you're not supposed to be in here." Emily turned to her. "Get Dr. Chin. No. Or I'm calling the police." The nurse hesitated, then bolted. Emily turned back to Tyler. "Do you remember anyone explaining an experimental treatment? A new drug protocol?" Tyler blinked again, trying to focus. Then finally he shook his head. "No. No one told me anything. That was it. The final proof." Reeves hadn't just violated policy. He had violated the trust of a patient. Suddenly the door burst open. "Dr. Reeves." He looked at Emily like she was a virus. "What the hell are you doing in here?" he snapped. Emily stood her ground. "Stopping you." Behind him, Dr. Maya Chen arrived, eyes wide, confused, then slowly growing furious as Emily shoved the printed document into her hands. "He forged the consent," Emily said. "And I have proof he's been running secret drug trials. Check the cabinet in his office. Bottom drawer." For a few seconds no one moved. Then Maya Chen's voice cut through the tension. "Dr. Reeves," she said slowly, "step away from the patient." He tried to argue, to deflect, but it was too late. Security was called. Emily stood in the corner, heart pounding, watching it unfold like a slow-motion movie. And finally, for the first time since the nightmare began, she felt like she could breathe again. The hallway outside pre-op 3B was silent, except for the low murmur of voices and the occasional beep of a heart monitor echoing from inside. But for Emily, it felt like the entire building had stopped breathing. She stood with her back against the cool tile wall, arms crossed tightly over her chest, staring at the floor. Her heart was still pounding. Her thoughts were still racing. But she didn't regret what she'd done. She'd stopped a surgery that could have hurt someone. She'd exposed a lie. And now, she had to deal with the storm that followed. Inside the room, Dr. Maya Chen was reviewing Tyler's chart, while a compliance officer had arrived and started taking photos of the printed consent form Emily had pulled. They were treating the situation seriously. Very seriously. And just down the hall, Dr. Reeves was being escorted away by hospital security. He wasn't in handcuffs. Not yet. But he didn't look untouchable anymore. He looked cornered. Emily didn't watch him go. She didn't need to. The look in his eyes when Dr. Chen had confronted him, that was enough. That was the look of a man who knew his secrets were starting to unravel. After a few minutes, Dr. Chen stepped out of the room. Her face was hard to read. She walked over to Emily slowly, holding the papers Emily had printed in one hand and the patient file folder in the other. "You were right," she said quietly. Emily blinked. "What?" Dr. Chen nodded. "The consent form was falsified. Tyler never signed anything. And there are discrepancies in the drug inventory logs. I'm sending everything to legal and the ethics board. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." Emily nodded, heart racing. "How did you get into his office last night?" Emily hesitated. She didn't want to get Luis in trouble. But lying now would only make things worse. "I used a maintenance key," she admitted. "I know it wasn't the right way. But I didn't think anyone would believe me unless I had proof. And I didn't have time to wait." Dr. Chen didn't say anything for a moment. Then she let out a long breath. "You broke protocol," she said firmly. "And you'll have to explain that to the board." "But," she paused, then looked Emily directly in the eye, "you may have saved that young man's life." Emily felt a weight fall off her shoulders. For the first time in days she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt seen. "What happens now?" she asked. Dr. Chin looked toward the end of the hallway where Reeves had been taken. "We suspend Reeves immediately. Launch a full investigation. And if even half of what you found checks out, there will be criminal charges." Emily nodded slowly. "And me?" Dr. Chin looked back at her. This time her voice softened. "You'll have to answer for how you got the information. But I think the ethics board will understand. Especially once we verify your claims. Until then," she hesitated, "you'll remain suspended. But off the record, thank you." Emily swallowed hard. Suspended. Still on the outside. Still technically in trouble. But no longer alone. Not anymore. Later that afternoon, Emily sat on a bench just outside the hospital entrance, her bag in her lap, the file folder still inside. She watched the ambulances come and go. The nurses pushing wheelchairs. The patients being walked by family. It was the same place she'd walked out of in tears just 2 nights ago. But everything felt different now. She didn't have her job back yet. Her reputation still hung in limbo. But for the first time, people were listening. The right people. The people who could make change happen. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Luis. "Saw what you did. Proud of you. Be careful. This thing may go deeper." Emily read the message twice. Deeper? She looked down at the folder in her lap, her mind racing again. What if Tyler wasn't the only patient? What if Reeves wasn't working alone? What if the forged forms, the mystery vials, the missing charts, were just the beginning? She stood up slowly and walked to the edge of the hospital courtyard, staring up at the building's windows. Something about that last message from Luis stuck with her. Be careful. It may go deeper. Her gut told her this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And as much as she wanted to walk away, to rest, to breathe, she knew she couldn't. Not until every secret was dragged into the light. The sun was starting to set when Emily pulled into her apartment complex. The sky was streaked with orange and gold, but she barely noticed. Her mind was still inside the hospital, inside the folder, inside that last text from Luis. Be careful. This thing may go deeper. She kept hearing it in her head over and over. She thought stopping Reeves would be the end. Now she wasn't so sure. She went inside, dropped her bag on the kitchen table, and sat down with a slow exhale. She pulled out the folder again. Tyler Redden's fake consent, the handwritten notes from Reeves' cabinet, the suspicious MRI scans. But one page in particular grabbed her attention. It was a patient log. Rows of patient names, surgical dates, and in some cases, strange symbols. Small, hand-drawn triangles next to some names. Circles next to others. It looked like some sort of internal coding. Tyler had a triangle. So did 3 others. Emily leaned in closer. One of the other names jumped out at her. Monica Sills. Age 62. Brain tumor. Surgery scheduled 3 months ago. Emily froze. She remembered Monica. Sweet woman. Always smiled, always brought homemade cookies for the nurses. But Monica never returned after her surgery. At the time, Emily assumed she'd been transferred to hospice. But now, she opened her laptop and searched the hospital's internal memorial page. Monica Sills, deceased. April 14th. Post-surgical complications. That wasn't suspicious on its own. But combined with everything else? Emily felt her chest tighten. Was Monica part of the same trial? Had Reeves tested his drug on her too? She went back to the list. One more triangle symbol. Nathan Luca. 41. She searched him too. Died during recovery. No family listed. 2 triangles. 2 deaths. Tyler would have been next. Emily leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't an isolated case. This was a pattern. And if it was a pattern, someone else had to know. Someone higher up. She grabbed her phone and called Luis. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. A cold, creeping feeling slid down her spine. She opened her encrypted messages, the ones Luis had helped her set up. She sent a quick note. I need to talk. No. Reeves wasn't working alone. I have proof. She hit send. The message marked as delivered. Then she waited. And waited. Nothing. By the next morning, Luis still hadn't responded. Emily checked every hour. Her stomach in knots. Something didn't feel right. He always replied fast. Always. But now nothing. She drove back to the hospital, parked outside, sat in her car and waited. After an hour, she saw the head of maintenance, Mr. Griggs, come outside for a smoke break. She got out and approached. "Hey," she said gently, "I'm looking for Luis. He okay?" Griggs looked up, blinked, then hesitated. "Luis?" "Yeah, janitor. Short dark hair. Real quiet. Helps out on night shifts." Griggs scratched his head. "I don't got a Luis on my team." Emily stared at him. "What do you mean? He's worked here for over a year. I've seen his badge." Griggs shook his head. "Look, maybe you got the name wrong. But we don't have anyone by that name. Not recently. You sure you're not thinking of someone else?" Emily's heart started pounding. No, that wasn't possible. She pulled out her phone and showed Griggs a picture she'd secretly taken 2 days ago, just a blurry shot of Luis by the supply door holding his clipboard. Griggs frowned. "Never seen him before. He doesn't work for me." Then he walked away. Emily stood frozen in the parking lot. She looked down at her phone. Luis wasn't answering. The hospital was pretending he didn't exist. His name wasn't in the staff directory anymore. And the back entrance key he gave her? It had vanished from her bag. She checked twice. It was gone. Someone had been inside her apartment. Her legs felt like they might give out. This thing goes deeper. Luis had warned her. Now he was gone. Vanished like he was never there. Suddenly, it wasn't just about patients anymore. It was about the system itself. Who else knew? Who else helped cover it up? Emily gripped the folder tight in her arms and walked back to her car, eyes darting around the lot. Every parked vehicle looked like it could be watching her. Every person walking past might be listening. She got in and locked the doors. And that's when she saw the envelope. It was sitting on her windshield. Plain white. No return address. She reached out, hand trembling, and pulled it inside. One sentence was typed on a single sheet of paper. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." Her heart dropped. No name. No signature. But she knew exactly who him meant. Luis. Emily stared out the window, hands shaking, but her jaw clenched tight. They wanted her afraid. They wanted her silent. But all they did was light a fire inside her. She was going to find out the truth. And this time the world was going to hear it. Emily sat in her car long after the envelope slipped from her hands. The words echoed louder than any scream. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." Luis was gone. His name erased. His badge, his job, vanished like smoke. Now they were coming for her. Whoever they were. But Emily wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry. The kind of anger that turns into resolve. That makes you stop second-guessing and start acting. That tells you, if they want you quiet, it's because you're dangerously close to the truth. She picked up her phone and dialed the only person she trusted now, Olivia Wren, a local investigative journalist she once treated in the ER after a car crash. They'd stayed in touch, casually, respectfully. Emily remembered Olivia had once said, "If you ever uncover something the hospital doesn't want seen, call me first." It was time. The phone rang. Olivia Wren. "It's Emily. Emily Carter." "Emily? What's wrong?" Emily's voice trembled for the first time in hours. "I need to talk to you. Today. Privately. I have something big. Something dangerous. People are getting hurt. And now they're coming after me too." There was a pause. Then Olivia said, "Text me a location. I'll be there in an hour." They met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Emily sat in the corner booth, the file folder between them. Olivia listened in silence as Emily laid it all out. Tyler's surgery, the forged consent forms, Monica's unexplained death, Luis's sudden disappearance. When Emily handed her the paper with the triangle markings and circled patient names, Olivia's eyes narrowed. "You realize this isn't just medical fraud," she said. "This is criminal experimentation. If even half of this is true, someone's going to prison." Emily nodded. "I think the hospital's been hiding this for years. Reeves wasn't working alone. He couldn't have been. And now they're erasing people." Olivia glanced at the envelope Emily had brought, the one with the typed threat. "Do you have any idea who left this?" "No," Emily said. "But I think they want me to feel watched. Trapped." Olivia looked her dead in the eye. "Then we publish. Together. Fast." Emily exhaled slowly. She had feared this moment, but now, it felt right. "Let's do it." Over the next 2 days, Olivia worked around the clock. Emily provided the files, the records, the voice notes she'd saved. They cross-checked names, dates, scanned for any hint of a cover-up. Emily even gave her the security footage she'd copied from the nurse's station before her suspension. A grainy clip showing Reeves sneaking into the restricted drug cabinet after hours. Olivia's article was damning. It didn't just name Reeves. It implicated hospital administrators who had ignored previous patient complaints. It questioned how funding had mysteriously increased around the same time certain patients began to die. And most of all, it told the story of Luis, the invisible janitor who risked everything to help Emily and vanished without a trace. On Thursday morning, the article went live. Nurse exposes secret trials at Valley Crest Hospital. Patients dead, records erased, whistleblower threatened. Emily watched it go viral in real time. By noon, local news stations were outside the hospital. By 2 p.m., 2 major health watchdog groups had issued statements demanding an inquiry. By 5, the hospital released a cold, vague press release about a temporary suspension of key staff pending investigation. And by 6 p.m., Emily got a call. Unknown number. She hesitated. Answered. A deep male voice spoke. You should have kept quiet. Click. The call ended. No name. No background noise. Just those 5 words. Emily stared at the phone. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She recorded the number. Saved it. Then forwarded it directly to Olivia, who already had contacts at the police cyber unit. She wasn't alone anymore. But she also knew this wasn't over. Not even close. That night, Emily stayed at a friend's apartment across town. She didn't go home. Something about that envelope still made her feel unsafe there. Olivia had offered to put her in touch with someone who could help her move temporarily. Emily had agreed. Before bed, she checked her email one more time. There was a new message. Subject, we need to talk. No name. No greeting. Just one line. You think Reeves was the only one? He was just the beginning. Attached was a single photo. A scan of another surgical chart. Different name. Different patient. Same triangle symbol. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. Someone inside the hospital was still watching. Still hiding. Still trying to speak, but anonymously from the shadows. Her inbox blinked again. Another message. This time, just a timestamp. A room number. And 2 words. Tomorrow. 11 a.m. The rabbit hole hadn't ended. It was only getting darker. The next morning, Emily woke before the sun. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every time her eyes closed, she dreamed of folders vanishing, of Luis's voice echoing through an empty hallway, of triangle-marked patients with hollow eyes. Her stomach twisted with nerves, but her hands didn't shake anymore. She was past fear. Now she was in the unknown, and something inside her had accepted it. The email had been simple. Room 613. 11 a.m. No sender name. No signature. She didn't know who was waiting there, or if it was even safe, but she had to go. She dressed in plain clothes, tied her hair up under a baseball cap, and parked several blocks away from the hospital. She entered through the side entrance near the outpatient labs. Fewer cameras, fewer people. Olivia had warned her to be careful. If they know you're coming, they might shut the whole thing down. Emily knew that already. She passed the elevators and took the stairs. No ID badge. No stethoscope. Just a clipboard and her press pass. Olivia's idea in case anyone stopped her. Act like media. It confuses them. And they hate cameras. When she reached the 6th floor, she hesitated. Room 613. This wing was barely used anymore. Mostly old patient rooms overflow during flu season. But today it was quiet. Too quiet. She knocked once. Then twice. No answer. She looked down the hall. Empty. She was about to leave when the door creaked open an inch. A hand pulled her inside. She gasped, ready to scream, until she saw the face. Dr. Yara Singh. Former chief pathologist. Retired 6 months ago. She'd vanished from the hospital almost overnight. No party, no farewell. Just one day she was there and the next she wasn't. You remember me, Dr. Singh said, her voice low, her eyes scanning the hallway before locking the door behind them. Barely, Emily admitted. You worked nights. Lab reports. You were quiet. Singh nodded. Quiet was the only way to survive. Emily stared. Was it you who sent the chart? Singh didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the window and pulled the curtain shut. Then she opened a drawer in the bedside cabinet. Inside was a flash drive and a stack of photos, X-rays, autopsy reports, blood panels. She handed them to Emily. These are from the last 2 years, Singh said. 18 patients. All marked with triangles. All had undocumented drugs in their systems. The compound matches a prototype I once tested in the lab, under direct instruction from Reeves, and an anonymous donor. Emily froze. Donor? Singh nodded grimly. The funding came from a private research firm. Name was hidden behind shell companies. But the goal was clear: experiment on high-risk patients under the radar. No ethics board. No oversight. Just fast results. Reeves was the face, but someone much higher was behind it. Emily flipped through the photos. Each one showed something chilling: patients with tumors that shrank suddenly, others whose conditions worsened overnight. All tied to the same trial. All buried under fake paperwork. Why didn't you come forward? Emily asked. Singh's eyes darkened. I did. Twice. I filed anonymous tips. Both times I was visited at home. The second time I was told to retire. And warned what would happen if I didn't. Emily's voice dropped. They threatened you. Singh nodded once. They threatened my daughter. She was 6. The weight of it hit Emily like a brick. This wasn't just medical fraud. It was organized, protected, institutionalized abuse. With patients as test subjects. And anyone who questioned it disappeared. Why tell me now? Emily whispered. Dr. Singh looked at her with tired eyes. Because you made noise. The kind of noise they can't erase easily. People are watching now. Journalists. Lawyers. You cracked the door open. And if I don't back you up, they'll close it again and lock it forever. Emily swallowed hard. You're not safe here, Singh added. Neither am I. But I'm willing to talk, to the press, the police. I just needed to see if you were real. And you are. Emily's voice shook. Luis helped me. He's gone now. I think they silenced him. Singh looked down. He was the first person to warn me. 4 months ago. Said he saw something on the night shift. Then he vanished. The air in the room turned heavy. They stood there in silence for a few seconds, as the truth wrapped its cold fingers around both of them. Then Singh leaned closer. They're still running trials. Quietly. In another wing. And I can prove it. But we need access to the underground lab. Sub-level 2. No patients go there. Only select staff. Emily blinked. That floor's restricted. Singh's lips curled into a half-smile. Not if you have a badge. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a staff ID, marked with a faded gold clearance stamp. I never turned it in. Still works. But we have to go tonight. Emily stared at the badge. Everything was spiraling fast. Deeper than she could have ever imagined. But she knew the choice was already made. She had to see what was hidden. With her own eyes. That night, Emily would return to the hospital for one last time. Not as a nurse. Not as a whistleblower. But as someone about to unlock a door that should have never been opened. And behind it? Something far more horrifying than she thought possible. The hospital at night felt different. Quieter, yes, but not peaceful. Not like before. The silence wasn't comforting now. It was watchful, heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. Emily stood in the dim hallway of the 6th floor, her borrowed ID badge hanging from her jacket, heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. Dr. Singh stood beside her, calm but tense, her eyes constantly scanning the corridor for movement. Once we go in, Singh whispered, we don't split up. We don't talk. We only record. Emily nodded. She had a small hidden camera clipped inside her coat, courtesy of Olivia. If anything happened to them, the footage would upload to the cloud automatically. They weren't just sneaking in, they were gathering proof. They took the back elevator down. Singh used her card to override the lock. A soft beep echoed through the shaft, then the numbers on the display flicked past the usual floors, B1, then a blank screen, and finally, 2. Sub-level 2. The doors opened with a heavy hiss. What greeted them was not what Emily expected. The hallway was spotless. Sterile white floors, brushed steel walls, and long fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. It didn't feel like a hospital. It felt like a lab, something out of a private biotech firm or secret government facility. They stepped out. No signs. No room numbers. Just doors. Singh led the way. Her steps were slow, deliberate. They passed the first room. It had no window, but a soft blue light glowed from the bottom crack. Inside, they could hear a steady mechanical beeping like heart monitors or data processors. Emily fought the urge to open it. They stopped at the third door on the right. Singh pulled a keycard from her sleeve, another relic from her time here. She swiped it once and the door clicked. Inside was a cold room lined with storage freezers, each one labeled with codes instead of names. Emily moved closer. The labels read, Trial B13, Serum A, Patient Lot, T. Retinum, Sils, and Luca. Her breath caught. These were the drug samples. Preserved, hidden, unreported. Blood and tissue from the exact patients marked with the triangle. Singh opened a cabinet and pulled out a folder. It contained full lab reports, effects of the experimental serum on each patient. Tyler's was there too. The report showed abnormal neural activity, hallucinations, memory disruption, aggression spikes. All symptoms Emily had seen firsthand. This was the drug Reeves had injected into him. Emily whispered, "They knew it was unstable." Singh nodded. "And they kept using it." Suddenly the hallway light flickered. Both women froze. Footsteps. Coming closer. Singh quickly turned off the lights inside the room. They stood in complete darkness, not breathing. Emily felt her pulse in her teeth. The footsteps paused. Outside the door. No knock. No voice. Just waiting. Then a set of keys jingled. Emily's heart stopped. Were they caught? Were they being followed? A second passed. Then the footsteps slowly faded, moving past their door and down the corridor. Singh exhaled just barely. "We have to go. Now." They exited the room and took a side path Singh remembered, an old delivery hallway used to bring in cold shipments. It led to a surveillance room. Emily didn't know what she expected. Maybe cameras. Maybe a security guard watching monitors. But what she found instead was worse. A wall of screens, each showing a different patient room. And every patient inside was unconscious. Some hooked to breathing machines. Others strapped to beds. One monitor had red text blinking. B13 redose, trial failed. Prepare disposal. Emily stepped closer, horror blooming in her chest. "These are live feeds." Singh nodded grimly. "These aren't patients anymore. They're test subjects." There were at least 9 people. None of them were in the hospital's public directory. No names. No diagnoses. Just code names. Subject 8B. Subject 9A. Their faces pale, forgotten. Emily had thought Tyler was the only one. She was wrong. These people had families. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they were the forgotten ones. The ones no one asked about. Homeless. Addicts. Undocumented. Perfect victims. Singh whispered, "Reeves may be gone, but someone's still running this. And they've expanded it." Emily felt like she was underwater. This wasn't just unethical. This was evil. They had enough footage. Enough files. But Emily didn't want to leave. She wanted to free them. She moved toward the master console. There had to be some way to unlock the rooms. Singh grabbed her arm. "Emily, don't. They'll trace the system." But Emily couldn't walk away. Not this time. She hovered over a key labeled, "System Override." Her finger hesitated. Then the door behind them slammed open. A blinding flashlight beam cut through the room. "Hands where we can see them," a voice barked. "Mel. Armed." Emily's heart exploded in her chest. But she didn't move. She turned slowly, her hands raised, and saw the last face she ever expected to see. Dr. Nathan Reeves. Alive. No lab coat. No pretense. Just darkness in his eyes. "I warned you," he said. The light from Reeves's flashlight sliced through the surveillance room like a knife. Emily froze. Dr. Singh slowly raised her hands too, her face stunned, but not surprised. Reeves stepped forward, calm, precise, like a man who already knew he was in control. His eyes weren't wild anymore. He didn't look like a man unraveling. He looked like a man who'd won. "What is this?" Emily finally managed, her voice cracking under the weight of betrayal and disbelief. "You're supposed to be gone. Fired. Investigated." Reeves smirked, lowering the flashlight just enough to let them see his full expression. "You think a hospital board meeting can stop a program like this?" he said quietly. "I'm not the disease, Emily. I'm part of the treatment." Emily's blood turned cold. Dr. Singh whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "He was never just a doctor." Reeves turned his head sharply. "Careful, Yara. You're walking a thin line. I protected you for a long time. You were useful, until you got soft." Singh stepped forward, voice hardening. "I signed up to save lives. You turned medicine into a weapon." Reeves laughed once, a dry, lifeless sound. "You still don't get it? We're not torturing anyone. We're advancing humanity. The patients chosen for these trials were never going to make it out of their rooms. We gave them purpose. We gave their deaths meaning." Emily snapped, "You lied to them. You drugged them. You experimented on them without consent, on people like Tyler, on people like Monica." Reeves stepped closer. "Tyler?" he interrupted. "He's a success story. His brain responded to Compound B better than anyone expected. You think his violence was a side effect?" Emily's stomach turned. You made him that way? Reeves shook his head slowly. We revealed what was already there. The silence that followed was heavier than anything either woman had ever heard. Like grief, like rage, like guilt coming alive and breathing in the corners of the room. Then Reeves motioned toward the door behind him. Two men in black tactical gear stepped in, no hospital IDs, no names. Just earpieces and emotionless eyes. Take the nurse, Reeves said. Gently. She's valuable. Emily backed up, but there was nowhere to run. Her breath quickened. Don't touch me, she hissed. But the men moved in fast, grabbing her arms with just enough force to make resistance feel useless. They weren't amateurs. They didn't need to yell or threaten. Their silence said everything. Dr. Singh tried to follow, but Reeves blocked her path. You don't get to leave, Yara. Not until you decide which side of history you want to be on. She stared at him, hatred flickering behind her tired eyes. I already chose. I'm just not done fighting yet. Reeves leaned in. Then you better hope she survives. Emily was taken through a back hallway she didn't even know existed. It led to a narrow steel door, unmarked, almost hidden behind an old linen cart. Inside was a clinical holding room. No windows, no equipment, just a chair and a table. They threw her in. Locked the door. Silence again. Only this time it felt absolute. Time passed. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. She sat alone, fists clenched, her heart still racing. Then the door opened, and a new figure walked in. Not Reeves. A woman. Impeccably dressed, maybe mid-50s. Silver gray hair tied back. A face that looked more like a politician than a doctor. She closed the door behind her. Miss Carter. Emily didn't speak. The woman continued, You're at a crossroads. The footage you captured? Already deleted. Your journalist friend? We flagged her IP. We'll find her soon. Emily stood slowly, fury building in her chest. Who are you? The woman smiled faintly. Someone who funds progress. The question is, will you be part of it, or buried under it? Emily stared. You think threatening me will change anything? I've seen what you're doing. The world will see it too. The woman's smile didn't fade. You really believe that? She dropped a file onto the table. Emily hesitated, then stepped closer. Inside the file were photos of her family. Her mother's house. Her younger brother's college. Even her own apartment. All taken from a distance. All time-stamped. The woman spoke softly. You are brave, Miss Carter. But bravery without protection is just martyrdom. Emily's voice broke. So what do you want? Me to join you? To help cover this up? The woman tapped a final photo. It showed Luis, alive, in a hospital bed, somewhere else. His wrists bandaged, his face bruised. He didn't disappear. He was transferred. Emily's heart dropped. Where is he? The woman shrugged. He's in one of our sister facilities. You help us control this situation, and you'll see him again. Maybe even help him recover. Emily stared at her, trembling, burning, but also trapped. This was the real game. Not just silence, but leverage. Everything she cared about now hanging from a thread. The woman stood. You have until morning. Choose wisely. Then she walked out, leaving Emily in that cold, silent room, holding the photo of a man who tried to help her, and now paid the price. Emily sat back down, and wept. Not because she was weak, but because she knew the only way out now was through. And when she got out, she was going to burn it all down. The fluorescent ceiling lights buzzed faintly above her. Emily sat alone, knees drawn up to her chest, in the white-walled holding room where they left her. Time had blurred. Her phone was gone. No windows. No clock. Only the haunting image of Luis, bruised, unconscious, looped through her mind like a broken prayer. They wanted her afraid. And it was working. But underneath the fear, rage simmered. A low, burning defiance that wouldn't die, not after everything they'd done. To Tyler. To Olivia. To Luis. To all the patients whose names were erased and replaced with trial numbers. She wouldn't be a pawn. Not again. Suddenly the lock on the steel door clicked. Emily stood fast, ready for a guard. A sedative. Another threat. But when the door opened, it wasn't a soldier. It was Monica. Weak, barely upright, eyes red and swollen, but alive. Her lab coat was gone, her hospital gown torn, and one of her wrists was still bandaged. But she stepped inside, holding a stolen ID card. Come with me. Now. Emily blinked. Monica, what are you doing? Monica glanced behind her, panicked. No time. I faked a psych response. They thought I was sedated. But I've been hiding. Listening. I know what they did to Luis. To us. Emily didn't hesitate. She grabbed Monica's hand. They bolted through the hallway, barefoot on cold floors, passing sterile walls and locked doors with security cameras that turned too slowly. Somewhere above them, alarms began to buzz. Reeves knew. The woman in the suit would know soon too. Monica led her to an old emergency stairwell. It reeked of mold and bleach like no one had used it in years. They climbed. Flight after flight. Monica grunted in pain, hand over her ribs. Where does this go? Emily asked. Roof access. They reached the top. But the door was locked. Monica fished out a stolen staff badge, her hands shaking. It buzzed red, access denied. Emily's heart dropped. Then she looked to her left. A fire extinguisher. She grabbed it, swung with everything she had, and smashed the lock. The metal groaned, then gave way. The door burst open. Cold night air hit their faces like a slap. They stepped out onto the rooftop of the hospital. Below them, the city lights flickered. Ambulances came and went. Life continued. No one down there knew the hell hidden beneath their feet. But that was about to change. Emily reached into Monica's pocket and pulled out the USB stick she had brought. Hidden. Protected. Footage from the surveillance room. Patient names. Trial logs. Even audio from Reeves himself. Proof. We get to Olivia, Emily said. She's still out there. Waiting. Monica nodded, tears running down her face now. I'm sorry for everything, Emily. I didn't know, not all of it. I thought I was helping. Emily grabbed her shoulders. You are now. But suddenly, the rooftop door burst open again. A man stepped out. It was Reeves, his coat flapping in the wind, a gun drawn. You could have walked away, he shouted over the wind. I gave you a chance, Emily. And you wasted it. Emily stood tall. You don't get to decide who walks away. He raised the gun. This ends here. But then a deafening bang. Not from Reeves. From behind him. He dropped, shot in the leg. He screamed, collapsing onto the concrete. Dr. Yara Singh stood in the stairwell, holding a pistol in her shaking hands. She stepped out slowly, face grim. No, she said. This ends with the truth. They left Reeves groaning on the rooftop and disappeared into the night through a maintenance ladder Singh had scouted hours before. By the time the police reached the roof, Reeves was gone, carried off by the same shadowy men who'd helped him before. But Emily, Monica, and Singh were already gone. And the USB stick? It was already uploading. To Olivia. To a dozen journalists. To the public. The countdown had started. The world was about to know everything. It began with a single post. Olivia's voice cracked as she spoke into the microphone at her desk, her apartment dimly lit but her eyes alive with urgency. On screen, she held up the USB drive Emily had sent. Its blinking light now burned into her memory. What you're about to see, she said, is not a theory, not a rumor. This is real. These are records, surveillance footage, test logs, conversations, proof of illegal human experimentation, happening right now, beneath one of the most prestigious hospitals in the country. And then she played the footage. The video exploded online like wildfire. It showed everything. Tyler's violent reaction to the unapproved drug injection. Monica's scream, recorded from the hallway after she found Luis. Reeves, speaking calmly into a recorder, consent is a luxury. The results will speak for themselves. Patient logs showing transfers to Sister Facility 3, with no return date. People couldn't look away. Within hours, #Estiana scandal and #Project Compound B trended worldwide. News anchors broke protocol to cover the story. Whistleblower doctors began speaking up. Legal experts debated liability. Protesters gathered outside St. Anne's Hospital with signs that read, "We are not experiments. Where are the patients? Shut it down." Inside a small motel room just outside the city, Emily sat with Monica and Dr. Singh, watching the chaos unfold from a dusty TV. Monica covered her mouth in shock. "They're listening," she whispered. Singh nodded, though she didn't look relieved. "They are. But this isn't victory yet. This is only exposure." Emily leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen. "Where's the backlash? The arrests?" Just then, the screen cut to a press conference. A suited spokesperson, cold, polished, stood at a podium outside the hospital. "There has been a serious misunderstanding," he said into dozens of microphones. "These videos are taken out of context. What you're seeing are early trial records, scrapped procedures, mistakes from years ago. St. Anne's remains a leader in ethical medical care. Emily's stomach twisted. They were spinning it, just like she feared. They're going to bury it, she muttered. Reeves is gone. That woman, she's still pulling strings. Singh replied, of course she is. This isn't just about a hospital anymore. This is a network, funded, protected, and decades old. They're ready for scandals like this. We need something they're not ready for. Monica slowly looked at them both. What if we find the patients? Emily turned. What? The ones marked transferred. The ones they moved to other facilities. If we find even one of them alive, we won't just have footage. We'll have a survivor. The room went still. A survivor. Not a statistic. Not a document. A human being. Emily whispered, Luis. Singh nodded. And whoever else is still breathing. They got to work. By nightfall, Emily had messaged Olivia again. By morning, Olivia's second video dropped. This one focused solely on the names, the missing patients. Faces. Dates. Ages. Emily's voice narrated over the footage. These people existed. And they were silenced. But now the silence ends. If you know them, speak. If you've seen them, come forward. And slowly something started to shift. Comments flooded in. Emails. Anonymous tips. A nurse in Arizona remembered a patient with no records who matched Tyler's description. A cleaner in Seattle recalled seeing unmarked vans delivering sedated people into a closed wing of an old rehab facility. One message stood out. I saw Luis. I know where they moved him. But we have to be careful. They're watching. Emily's hands trembled as she read it. She looked at Singh. They're not invincible anymore. Back at the hospital, Reeves' office was cleared out. But his name wasn't removed from the system. And that woman, the one with the silver hair and polished smile, appeared again. This time on a news segment, introduced only as a former medical ethics consultant. She smiled calmly at the interviewer and said, people are afraid of progress. But when history looks back, they'll see us not as villains but as visionaries. Emily watched from the motel. Eyes narrowed. We're going to prove her wrong. And in the shadows of a hidden facility, Luis opened his eyes. Barely conscious, hooked to a machine. Surrounded by strangers in white coats and wires. And somewhere in a control room above him, a red light turned green. Trial 7 was about to begin. The sun hadn't risen yet. Emily sat in the back seat of a borrowed SUV, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, her fingers wrapped tightly around a burner phone. The message from the whistleblower echoed in her mind. The compound is hidden in the old forest preserve. Unmarked buildings. No signs. You won't find it on any map. Next to her, Monica stared at the map screen, heart pounding as their GPS led them closer to a part of the state none of them had ever visited before. Singh, behind the wheel, drove with quiet fury, calm on the outside, but every so often, her jaw clenched hard. They weren't just hoping to find Luis now. They were planning to end it. The forest stretched wide and endless, trees gnarled and heavy with fog. Just off a winding dirt road, Singh slowed the car and stopped. There, she said. Barely visible through the mist was a chain-link fence wrapped in vines. Beyond it, a low, concrete structure, no windows, surrounded by silence. No guards. No lights. Too quiet. They've already moved them, Monica whispered. Emily shook her head. Or they think no one's stupid enough to come this far. They crept through a hole in the fence and approached the building. The front door was locked. But a broken ventilation panel on the side gave them an entrance. They crawled in, heartbeats in sync with the dripping of unseen pipes. Inside was worse than they imagined. The hallways were narrow, industrial, lit by flickering emergency lights. The floors were stained. The walls, scratched and dented. Then came the rooms. Each one had a metal bed, a camera above, and 4 lines that led nowhere. No names, just numbers on the doors. Emily stopped in front of room 14B. A noise. She peeked in. Luis, alive, pale, weak, but breathing. His eyes opened slowly as she stepped in. Miley? She rushed to him, hands trembling. I've got you. I've got you, Luis. We're getting out of here. Monica stepped in behind her, gasping at the sight of him. She immediately began checking his vitals, whispering to herself. He's drugged. But the dosage is low. They were prepping him for something. Probably testing reactions. We're just in time. Singh stayed at the door. We don't have long. They found 3 more patients alive, barely conscious in nearby rooms. One girl couldn't speak. An older man kept calling for someone named Beth. Emily helped him stand anyway. But just as they prepared to leave, a voice rang out through the building. A cold, echoing voice from unseen speakers. "I told you, Emily. You don't walk away from this." The lights dimmed. Emergency shutters slammed over the exits. "She's here," Singh muttered. "She's watching us." Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway opened. The woman in the suit stepped out. Immaculate. Come. Holding a tablet in one hand. "Do you even understand what you're ruining?" she asked softly. The future was almost ready. People like Luis, they were part of something bigger. Evolution takes sacrifice. Emily stepped forward, blocking her path to Luis. "They didn't volunteer. They weren't warned. You didn't ask. You stole them. And you lied about it." The woman tilted her head. "No one remembers the ethics of breakthroughs. Only the outcome. And history belongs to the survivors." "Then I'll make sure you're not one of them," Emily said. She held up a second drive, a hidden camera, secretly uploading everything they had just seen. Live feed. Audio. Video. Broadcasting right now. Straight to Olivia. Straight to the press. The woman's expression finally cracked. "Just for a second. No one's coming for you," she hissed. "They don't need to," Monica said, stepping beside Emily. "We already sent them everything." Footsteps echoed in the distance. Outside, sirens. They were surrounded. Not by the woman's guards, but by state agents, EMTs, and investigators. Olivia had shared their coordinates. The trap had finally been reversed. The woman turned slowly and walked into the darkness without another word. Emily tried to follow, but the hallway beyond her vanished as steel shutters slammed closed behind the woman's heels. Gone. 30 minutes later, Emily sat in the back of an ambulance next to Luis, watching as he was stabilized by real doctors. Ones who didn't hide behind glass and lies. She reached for his hand. He gripped hers weakly. "It's over," she whispered. But Singh, standing nearby, didn't look relieved. She stared into the woods, at the direction the woman had escaped into, and said quietly, "No, not yet." 3 weeks later. The headlines had changed. St. Anne's under federal investigation. Hospital CEO resigns amidst scandal. Experimental drug trial sparks international ethics debate. Emily stood at the edge of a quiet lake just outside the city, the early morning sun barely piercing through the fog. Her hands were buried in her coat pockets, eyes tired but calm. Luis was recovering in a trauma rehab center. Monica had gone completely offline, relocated under federal protection. Singh had returned to her clinic, now working with legal teams to help other whistleblowers come forward. The world was still spinning. But something inside Emily felt, still. She had told the truth. She had made them listen. She thought that would be enough. That evening, back in her apartment, Emily sat alone at her kitchen table. The city lights twinkled outside her window like stars trapped in glass. Her old laptop sat open in front of her, unread messages piling up in her inbox. Then, a new notification. One message. No sender. No subject. Just a single attachment. Project Dawn Phase 2. Emily's breath caught. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. She clicked. Inside the zipped folder were dozens of documents, each stamped with a cold, gray emblem she didn't recognize. Another corporation. Another project. Another location. There were names, dates, surveillance clips, and one video. A new patient. She hit play. The footage was grainy but clear. A young woman strapped to a table, eyes darting wildly, machines hooked to her chest. A voice spoke from off-camera, clinical and detached. Patient 1 of 47. Initial response to serum B4. Unstable. Location secured. Progress acceptable. Then the screen flickered, and the video ended. Emily sat back, her stomach tightening. It wasn't over. They had moved. Not just Luis. Not just St. Anne's. The experiment lived on. And someone had sent this to her, for a reason. Her phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Are you seeing this?" Emily replied. "Yes." "Who sent it?" "No idea. But they want us to keep going." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, then stood. She grabbed her jacket, her bag, her camera. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Then we keep going.